Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Joyride podcast. I'm so excited to be having on two fabulous guests today. They are the hosts of the Stellar Cycles podcast, which is a podcast for women about their hormones, reproductive cycles, fertility, and more. So please welcome Alina Sauza and Eva Brown. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for inviting us, Rebecca. I was so stoked when you reached out and you're like, wait, I haven't had you on my podcast yet. Sign up. So I signed up right away, and this is going to be a really cool conversation, I feel like.
Yes. So Alina and I met what feels like forever ago. It was probably only a few months ago, but we met. She reached out about doing a human design chart reading with me. And we vibed, we connected. She told me all about her podcast, which I think at the time you were either just starting, I think it was beginning stages, right?
A few months into it.
Oh my gosh, amazing. So I've seen it grown, and it's grown for sure. I mean, the graphics and the content and what you guys talk about, it truly is not only such an interesting show, but a show that's needed. I've never seen a show like this before.
Wow, that's chills. Yeah, we both have chills right now. That's amazing to hear. Thank you so much. We got the idea for the show when we were in Italy last year. And I think I was going through some sort of period stuff. I was not in the mood, and also having to deal with family and all these other people on the trip, itineraries, plans. And I remember the only person that I could talk to about how I was feeling and have this excuse of the period was Eva. Mm. And when we started talking about these things, we were like, okay, I think more women would tap into this conversation if we were to post it, because there's so much that has to do with our cycles and the different phases that we're in, that when you start understanding that okay, you were on this trip, you were in your, let's say, luteal phase, you were a week before your period, that's why everything was so difficult. And we kind of started getting more and more into that, researching it more. And in February is when we started the Stellar Cycles podcast to bring this information to more women and help them optimize their lives.
Amazing.
During that time, what I feel like was so important is not only realizing that you're in your luteal phase, so everything was a little bit more stressful and harder because that's part of it. But then also when you transferred over into your menstrual cycle, it was so interesting to see comments from people that are so natural for us as society to say things like, don't let your period be an excuse, or that's she's moody because her period, and
or you should just power through it.
Oh my God,
that's the best one.
When did society turn against a woman's natural way of being and kind of make us feel bad for these things when it's so powerful, and people rejoice when we're in our ovulation cycle or a follicular phase, but then we don't get any credit or help when we're in this other part of our cycle that we can't do anything about.
Mm-hmm. I think a very defining moment for me, and I actually haven't told this story on our show or anybody else's show, but there's a specific moment on the trip where I was in a lot of pain. I was not doing great. And I was sitting between my mother and my new husband. And this was a post-wedding trip. And we were sitting at the table with his parents, his sister, this big family situation. I love my mom so much. We have such a good relationship, but she could tell that I was what was going on with me. And she leans over me to my new husband. She goes, don't ever let that be an excuse for her. And I felt so betrayed that a woman would because already guys have a negative connotation when it comes to periods. They think that we can't handle things when we're on our periods, we're in a mood. But I just felt such shock and betrayal in that moment that my mom as a woman would turn to my new husband who who we're trying to train and who normally supports me and makes space for that time of the month. It was so shocking and so painful that she would say that, and also in front of everybody.
Right.
But that was really the moment that I was like, Eva, we have to change the conversation.
Yeah.
We have to change the conversation. We have to, number one, make it more common and comfortable to talk about, since it is something that almost every woman of reproductive age goes through. So to maintain it as this like secret, or like to even hide men away from the realities of menstruation, periods, reproductive cycles, I think that just does a disservice to everybody. So our hope with starting Stellar Cycles was that if we can get the conversation going and put it in a more like palatable,
appetizing.
normalize it.
Like, hello.
Yeah, and also show
Better
people
period.
good at the end of it, that they can make it work for them. So that was kind of, I've never told that story before because it is kind of like tough, and it doesn't at all like describe me and my mother's relationship, but it was just in that one moment that it was like, wow, this is really how people think about this stuff, and we got to make it different for ourselves.
And I can only imagine how triggering that must have been, for sure.
Yeah.
So let's backtrack a little bit. So you're in Italy. I'm assuming you're in Italy for your wedding.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you're in Italy for your wedding. You guys are best friends, I'm assuming. So now you have created this podcast together. Okay,
Yes.
Perfect. So you come together and you're like, okay, we need to normalize this. We need to, shift the narrative, really just like open this conversation to people. Do you have like the knowledge of this? Because I know that, Alina, you have a medical background. So like, let's talk about the element of being comfortable to talk about this and the science and the logic about it, because you guys do have the science behind it. And it's not just like, okay, we're just two girls talking about our experience,
Yes. So there was quite a bit of like initial like research and
for years
up until
this point. That's the only reason why we could talk about those things.
Yes.
No one else would hear us ramble about the subjects, but we eat it up.
Yeah. So the way that happened, like you said, yes, I do have an ultrasound kind of medical background. Whereas Eva, she has done a lot of independent study and a lot of independent research with her health, energy work, all of these different human design, all these different areas, and has kind of taken it upon herself to learn these things. Whereas I kind of fell into it by way of like being in school for it and then finding it interesting. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and especially when I started to work in the hospitals in the ultrasound field, I really started to see quite how many women were coming in for uterine issues, ovarian issues, period issues, obviously struggling to get pregnant. We know that fertility is such a big thing in the country now. So it was then that I was like, whoa, we're lucky enough to know this information, and it feels like more and more natural to us the more that we practice it. But people out here, they literally have no idea. They're not taught it in schools. Right. The most that they're taught in sex ed at schools is either abstinence or use a condom at best, but girls are literally not taught about their cycle at all. Even in college, unless you go into a very specific like medical field, you're not going to learn that stuff. Yeah. So me being in the field a few years, and then I just started getting more information about just the female hormonal system. So hearing something on a podcast, reading a book, Woman Code by Elisa Vitti really opened our eyes to like, whoa, this stuff really works for people. You can really optimize and adjust your lifestyle in such a way that like your period doesn't debilitate your life. So it was over a year now that we've really been like researching this stuff and like making content for the podcast out of our research.
I think where our knowledge really marries very well is in your knowledge that you have from ultrasound and from working and being in that field. And then my Eastern medicine knowledge, which that came into play when my dad had cancer. So I'm learning how to heal all these things for 10 years almost. And then leaning mostly into Eastern medicine and realizing that everything is rooted in the body. All the emotions that we carry, our body's always speaking to us. So then when Alina would start to talk to me about a woman's body and how the womb works and the uterus, I started to realize all of these issues that she's coming back and seeing in the hospital that women are struggling with is rooted in a lot of like locked trauma that we might have in our womb, or emotion, even simple emotions that we're not sharing, we're not vocalizing. Because over centuries, women have been oppressed. Them vocalizing how they feel has been looked at as like no one would. Everyone, like, what did they say about women? They would say women should be seen, not heard, was like an old an old saying back in the day. And then you look at all the womb issues we have now. And when you know about Eastern medicine, you realize that those emotions lock in and create bigger issues.
Disease, chronic disease. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Totally.
All the things. I've been working with a holistic practitioner for 2.5 years. And I mean, the entire experience has changed my life in every aspect, not just physically, but spiritually, mentally. Like, it's changed my period. And I think one of the biggest misconceptions that I've found, especially in women, is, oh, it's just like this. Like, oh, during my period, like, it's so painful and I'm bleeding so much and like this and that. And like, that's not what you should be experiencing. Yes, there are some symptoms that, yes, we do all experience, but also it's just changing the narrative from normalizing these really horrible symptoms. Because again, people are not, really working through the traumas and the blocks and the emotions and like all of these things that you just spoke about.
Mm-hmm. And like you said too, like women are just told, like when we're told to expect our period, when we're told to expect pregnancy, childbirth, like that's gonna suck and you're gonna have a miserable time. And for some people that is very much their reality. But I just feel like that. It doesn't have to be like that. I just wonder how differently things would be if, like, let's say if moms were, first of all, comfortable and had good self-esteem with their bodies, then they would be able, and the knowledge, right? The education is another component, but then they would be able to teach their little girls and also little boys, right? Because we also want to like normalize the conversation, but teaching like the little girl that when you do get this will be your special time. This is like a time to take off from other things. Like, you don't have to like push through it, like all that language, but just kind of like, I guess what I'm trying to say is like my period started changing when I started changing my thoughts and my attitude towards my own uterus. So let's say when I used to have bad periods, I would think bad thoughts about my uterus, how much I hated my period, how I couldn't wait for it to be over, how it was going to be so painful and miserable. But then somewhere along the lines, I got some information from a womb practitioner on Instagram. And it was like, start by thinking nice thoughts towards your womb, massaging it when it's that time, kind of like helping it do its job. And when I started doing that, things did start to change. It's kind of wild. It feels the energy.
Yeah. Well, everything in life is energy, right? And then everything is energy, but also when we think about like our relationship with men, our relationship with money, our relationship with ourselves, with our period, it's all a relationship and we have to nurture and care for that relationship. So yeah, I totally get that when our period comes and we're like, fuck, here it is again. I'm going to like turn into a raging bitch. And I'm going to be bleeding and I'm not going to be any fun. Like
that's how it's going to go.
Yeah, that's how a lot of people perceive this time of the month. But I've really been actively working on changing my mindset where it used to be like, F for like 2 weeks, it's not even just the period. It's the week before. It's a premenstrual phase where I'm like, okay, my back's hurting, this and that, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, this is like such a beautiful gift that my body gets to experience. So why don't I shift the way that I'm viewing my body? And I swear my period has changed so much, in addition to all of the like lifestyle things that I do and nutrition and this and that. So I totally agree with you.
And for the people who are having miserable periods, because we've all been there, it's just a sign that your body's sending you that, hey, maybe you could tighten up some things in your lifestyle. Maybe you could optimize a few things here and there. And that's literally what our podcast is full of. So it's like, if you're dealing with this, like do this at this certain time, like eat these foods. Maybe don't push yourself to do this crazy exercise when you are a week before your period and your back is hurting. You don't have to go as hard as you did like 2 weeks ago when you had all that energy, right?
It's learning how to relieve the symptoms in the moment, but also preventing them
that part
the following month.
Right. Yeah, it's a good mix of that. And two, I think what I have learned about my period is, I mean, I've been in the health and wellness field for such a long time and I coach women. So people will naturally come to me and say like, hey, what exercises should I do? What should I eat? Blah, blah, blah. And I tell them, one, there's so much incredible knowledge and information out there, like a podcast like yours where people can go to. But for me, it's a very intuitively led process. Like I've learned so much about my body throughout the past few years. Like I've learned just I naturally don't want to be doing HIIT workouts and crazy strength training workouts on the first day of my period. Like, yes, I still like to move. I have felt for my body. And that's another thing. My body is completely different from your guys' bodies. So what works for me does not work for you. But again, it's like there's so much synergy here. Like it makes so much sense why people give you that advice of like lower impact workouts, like do the at-home Pilates, just go for a nice walk, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's go into the cycles of your period. Like how long, what do they mean? What does that mean for your skin? Like maybe some tips and tricks on what to eat, all that kind of good stuff.
So there's 4 phases, starting with menstrual, going into follicular, then into, oh my goodness, what is the next one?
Ovulatory.
Thank you. And then luteal. We end in the winter.
Yeah, so those are kind of the main 4 that we always kind of base our episodes and all of our information on. You know, everything always reverts back to like, this is for your menstrual phase, this is for your follicular phase. Now, I think there's been like, let's clear up the confusion between phase and cycle, because a lot of the times you'll hear women say, oh, I'm on my cycle right now. And what she means to say is she's actively menstruating, she's on her period, but you're actually on your cycle all the time because the cycle is continuous, right?
Mm-hmm.
So just the menstrual part of the cycle is what they're talking about, right? So first, your cycle starts when your period starts. That like clears your slate. You got a new month coming. You didn't get pregnant last month. Menstrual day 1 of your bleed. That's also how they count it in the like in the medical field when they count like date pregnancies and all these things. Now, a lot of the times, you know, menstrual duration varies for a lot of people, but it'll be around 3 to 7 days typically. And then you're heading into your follicular phase. Once your uterine lining is done being shed through your period, your new eggs are starting to grow for the next ovulation cycle. Ovulation usually happens like midway through your cycle, about 2 weeks after your period. So during this follicular phase, after the menstrual phase, that your body is focused on growing those little eggs. We as women, like men they're constantly producing sperm. As women, we're born with all of the eggs that we're ever going to have in our life. So when we hit puberty, that's when those eggs start like maturing in the follicles, growing, popping out at ovulation. And if they don't get used or like fertilized, then our body discards it. So follicular phase, you're having a lot of energy because you're coming off of your period. You have a new month. We always talk about the analogy of like a full tank of fuel, right? So at the start of your month, you have a full tank of fuel. You're ready to go. A lot of women are feeling a lot more energetic, a lot more social, and especially leading out of the follicular now into your ovulatory phase. When you're in your ovulatory phase, those are like that fertile period. You know, if you use a cycle tracking app, it'll like kind of show you like where your fertile period might be or fertile phase in the middle of your cycle. And that's usually when the body is like ready to release that egg. You're in your prime time of like looking the best you're ever going to look in the month because all the atoms in your body like shift to make you more attractive and help you find a mate. And
pheromones are popping.
You're magnetic.
You're glowing.
People are way more attracted to you. Whether
more energy.
Yeah, you have energy. You're social, sensitive. Yes. So we always like to plan our like heavier social events or like. And your speech improves too. So if you're having to give a speech or give like a TED talk or come on a podcast or something, or even have an important conversation with someone, your ovulatory week is going to be the best time to do that.
Wow. I am blown away. I'm like, okay, watch me after this episode, just like rescheduling everything on my calendar.
We literally do.
That's how we live our lives now. And it's so great because we don't run into like this resistance of like, oh, like I'm at maybe 3% and now I have to get in front of all these people and present a meeting. You know, we just don't do that anymore because we adjust. And so then ovulation, you're about halfway through your month, right? And after ovulation, your little egg pops out, you know, whether or not it's fertilized. If it's fertilized, you're going to have a pregnancy later on. But if it's not fertilized, you are going to feel a dip in energy because our hormones are always playing at like various ratios. We have 5 different hormones as women, and we talk about those extensively on our podcast. And we even have a little bit of testosterone that gives us our energy and drive and sex drive as well. But after the ovulatory phase, comes the luteal phase, and that's the longest one. That's like the second half of your cycle, usually about 2 weeks. The first week, you still have a bit of energy. But then it's that next week, like the week before your period, the latest part of the luteal phase is where you start getting the symptoms, the cravings, the migraines, the bloating, maybe
Fatigue.
I noticed that I put on more weight in that phase too, and that's really interesting too. When you start tracking that, you're like, oh, okay, so that's when I'm bigger or
you're hungrier. You're just snacking more.
Totally.
Eat 300 more calories during that phase anyway, preparing for your period.
And that's another thing that's been cool to learn too, that in your luteal phase, like, don't feel bad about the cravings because your body needs more calories during that time, just point blank period. So because you're going to be literally burning 30 to 40% of your daily energy when you are on your period. That's why we get so tired. That's why we don't have that much energy reserve. So fuel and nutrition, hugely important during the luteal phase to prepare for the period. If you're not, and we've seen this in our own lives, if we're not eating correctly the week before our period, it's a mess when it comes.
And we call the period the report card. So when the report card comes, how did we do the month prior? And it will tell us.
Yeah.
So you said that you're burning 30 to 40%. Is that on your actual period or in like the PMS stage?
On your actual period, yes. So when your body is pushing out the blood and your uterus is contracting with the cramps and getting all of that out of there, it takes 30 to 40% of your daily energy to work on that process.
Wow.
And then women are expected to go to work and like operate on the same level that they were operating in the follicular or ovulatory phase? No.
Yeah. It's so, I say it's so crazy. It's not so crazy, but like,
it's not.
If you were to sync this up, like as a business owner, like I have a mentor who, says that she really syncs up her cycle to doing her work. And like, when are the most potent times for her to be, engaging and being creative and like on her shit. And then it's, tied up with like the moon phase. Like my period literally came almost a week later from this full moon because it affected me so deeply. And then I was in a wedding and I basically, it's so funny because I texted my friend. I'm like, Jamie, you will not believe this. This is the bride. I was
You were here. You were in California for the wedding.
Yes. I was in Newport Beach for the wedding. But so I tracked my cycle and I was supposed to get it on Tuesday. And I know if it says that it's coming on Tuesday, it will usually come about 2 to 3 days later. So I expected it to come Thursday, Friday. And I'm like, okay, you're either going to get this period, Rebecca, Thursday or Friday, because I will not have it during the wedding weekend. It wasn't even a question. It was a statement. I kid you not. When I walked in from the reception, within 5 minutes, I got my period that Sunday night.
Wow. But it held off for you.
Oh, I told you it was not a question. It was a statement. I was like, there's no way in hell I'm going to be bleeding like throughout this weekend. Like, can you imagine when I was part of the bridal party?
Yeah.
Okay, but yeah, it's all connected. It's so wild. And it, just like you said, like, I think society is so conditioned to think that as women, we just need to power through and like go to work. And I think every day, thank God I work for myself because I have just gotten so used to, and it's beyond just like giving into your feminine energy. It's like, no, as a woman, like there are some days where I simply just can't. And that's that. Like I simply just can't.
No. Don't want to.
Exactly. But it's taken, a lot of deconditioning from myself to like really just block out this noise of like needing to power through and always create. And like, even with myself and my workouts and knowing very intuitively just what I need, what I don't, because when you really think about it, oh my gosh, we have like a week of being our sparkliest, like most juicy and prime potent energy. That's crazy. Out of a month?
2 weeks.
Yeah.
2-ish.
Your luteal phase is pretty cool though too, because that's when you're going to get most of your tasks done. And we've tracked this a lot in our own cycles. I get the most amount of work done actually in my luteal phase because I'm not social and I'm very diligent about getting my entire to-do list done.
Another interesting thing is the ratio of hormones, right? Because it's different in each phase. When you're in your luteal phase, the levels of progesterone, and progesterone is a really great hormone that our body naturally make. It's a calming hormone. It's a stress reduction hormone. It's great for your hair, skin, nails. And so
I feel calm, cool, collected during my luteal phase.
Yeah. So when you're in your luteal phase, those higher levels of progesterone, they will literally make you notice things that you didn't notice before. So you're kind of in this like administrative vibe where you're like, I got to cross off all these things before the next cycle starts. Like you have this very like energy of completion on almost and during your luteal phase. And also nesting. You really want to make your house nice for when you do have your period. So you're not having to run out and get your beet juice or your whatever you need, you know?
You're really in a space of your rest and digest, your parasympathetic nervous system is really starting to kick on. And now in that relaxed state, I feel like it's easier to meditate, to see all the things because you're slowing down a little bit. You're just becoming more focused on what really does matter. And you're preparing to go into your winter, which is your period. Because we talk about the phases and seasons.
We didn't even mention the seasons.
I kind of got it, but go ahead and walk me through it.
Yeah, so like menstrual phase, like Eva said, is your winter time. And it's a very inward time. You know, when you're on your period, you might have to be around people, but your desire is just to kind of be alone, you know, and like kind of get through it. And that's just the reality of winter, you know?
And this is the purpose of this is it helps us reflect inside. So that's the time when we're suggesting to do shadow work, to do meditations, to reflect on your month and see what worked for you, what didn't.
And I think too, because like, you know, in ancient times, like menstruating women and like menstruating blood had a lot of like power. So we are like, they say like the veil between like the physical and like the non-physical world is thinner when you are on your period. So you're able to get better downloads. You can like meditate more clearly. And yeah, it's just like a really great time to take advantage of like our like supernatural powers, if you know what I'm saying.
Yes, that's so interesting that you say that because I got my period like, okay, super late Sunday, Monday. And I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but we're in a crazy retrograde season right now. Mercury's in retrograde. And I swear this week, I'm like, I am a different human being. I'm on my period right now. I'm almost at the end of it, but like the downloads, like just the connection to myself, I really feel like that veil is just so much brighter and clearer.
Yeah, I mean, I know that like in the because like I was raised Christian, and I always remember like reading in the Bible that like the women would always get sent outside of the city walls to like chill until for like their entire menstrual week. They were considered dirty. They were not like allowed to be with the men or even inside the city. But I told Eva, I was like, dude, they were probably having a freaking ball of a time out there, just all girls, no men, no kids, just vibing, probably doing their little rituals and like how dope.
Sure.
Yeah, I would love it. Send me out.
Yeah, girl, send me out. Let's start these retreats. I'm ready.
100%
retreats for sure. Okay.
That's so good.
So that's the winter phase. It's all about like retreating. It's kind of giving me Mercury and retrograde vibes, like introspection, going inwards, being by yourself. So that's the winter phase. Then comes the follicular.
Yeah, okay. And follicular, and this also really helps when you're thinking in terms of food. So thinking of what food to eat for each phase. So in the winter time, let's say people are eating a lot of soups, they're eating stews, they're eating more like nourishing things. That's exactly what you need during your menstrual phase too, because your body is losing so much of its blood and minerals, nutrients. So it's super important to like kind of eat those like winter warming foods. Next, when you move into your spring phase, follicular phase, foods are we doing for spring phase?
Light foods like leafy greens. What are some other?
A lot of raw.
I'm eating pineapple all the time. A lot of raw food.
Energy-giving foods.
Yes, salads, of course. Another sunflower seeds.
Yeah, another thing that we love to talk about for follicular phase is carbs are not your enemy. So, like in your follicular phase, you're using a lot of energy. So you do need that, like. Pasta is fine, rye is fine. Like if you like that type of stuff, like do not think that like you need to stay away from that because those carbs will give you like what you need to keep running all day basically.
And your egg kind of needs it because you move into your ovulatory phase, and that's where it's summertime when you actually you'll notice you don't need to eat as much. You just naturally have a lot of energy. You're eating like lighter, but still avocados during your ovulatory phase because you want a lot of healthy fats.
Yeah. And then luteal phase is just like harvesty. We're talking like grounding foods. So you're thinking like pumpkins, squash, sweet potatoes, just anything that's like on the ground, because rooted, because if we don't like pay attention to what's going on in our luteal phase, we can get like really like floaty up here, emotional, sometimes like projective, but like the grounding foods really do help ground you down during the luteal phase. Another tip too is for people who are feeling like emotionally heightened during their luteal phase and like overwhelmed, put that into creativity, like channel that into like making something or creating something instead of like butting heads with people in your life. It would be a lot better.
I found paper mache really soothes me. There's this one time I did this boot and I put mache over it, and I was so into it. Something like that would be great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just do something with your hands. Yeah.
This is like a full-time job, just being a damn woman.
It is, and that's why we want people to respect it. People want us to, be beautiful and be these soft, loving women, but it takes a lot of work to be a nurturing and grounded woman, not only on ourselves, but on our outside too, gifting this world with all this beauty and design.
And I'll tell you too, like I feel a lot more like well-rounded and like more of like a complete person living in this way, and like really taking each season of my cycle for what it is, and knowing that like, hey, if I feel super shitty today, guess what? I'm not gonna in 3 days. This is gonna be over, rather than being locked into it and being like, this is forever, I also think too that the whole undertone of this is like, not to bring like women empowerment, because I think women are very, very empowered. I think we've just forgotten where it lies. And like we've been swallowing everything that we've been told. But it's like, no, we're powerful as shit. And like this cycle, just like talking about this, reiterates it, right? Like what our bodies are able to do just to be able to produce life. Like we are very, very powerful. I mean, like women used to be burned at the stake and drowned because they could do math. Like, you know what I mean? So
wow.
Sorry,
the math isn't mathing.
The math isn't mathing.
So true. We are such powerful creatures, powerful beings. So I want to know how the both of you, like, one, how do you track your cycle? What apps do you suggest? How do you like run your business? Because are you guys on your are you in the phases at the same time? Like, what does that look like, really incorporating this work into your everyday life?
Yeah. Do you want to talk about your favorite apps? How do you do it?
Yeah. So I do mine on 3 different apps, just because I like to. So one on my health app on Apple, I track it there. And then also I track it on this app called 28 Days, which I love using. And the reason why I do multiple is because like some of them aren't necessarily like completely accurate, but I like them for different reasons. So 28 I like because it shows you what type of food you should eat, gives you recipe ideas, and I like the interface of it. It's cute. You log on, it says you are in your ovulatory phase, and it'll be orange with the sun.
Like you're in your butterfly phase or in your tiger phase.
Little quotes. It's cute. Health app is where I go and I put the actual day, and then that's where I'm like manually tracking it and knowing where I'm at.
Mm-hmm.
And then how I plan my week is basically on my calendar, and I'm kind of married to this grocery guide that we have. It's a free download that we've created, and on this guide is where I'm finding out what food I should eat, and then I'm planning my week ahead. All the groceries that I order, I get them shipped to my house.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what about your work calendar?
My work calendar. I do book all of my important meetings and bigger events around my ovulatory phase, follicular as well, luteal. What I've noticed is actually just kind of naturally happens for me.
After a few cycles, it just naturally, like literally your life will align to it.
It's something I literally cannot wait
to work really hard at it. I think if you just do the minimum of knowing where you're at and eat as well as you can to that cycle that you're in, the phase that you're in, but everything else will kind of naturally align. Like your energy is going to raise, your frequency is going to be higher. And then I think when you reach that level, the universe is working with you. So every element, every phone call, like I don't even need to like have important, like, sometimes you need to make important phone calls. I don't even need to make them. I swear the person will just call me. Like everything will just naturally happen.
It's in receiving mode. That's what
you're just open to it.
That's all we want to get back to as women. That's all we want to get back to as women. And another thing too, give me a moment to say this because I had a train of thought and I lost it. You're talking about, how everything aligns. We like to always remind our listeners in our podcast that like, for someone who like doesn't know any of this, like this is a lot of information, right? And don't at all be overwhelmed or discouraged by having to make all of these changes at the same time. That's just not feasible. Like taking anything from 0 to 100 is just not going to work, right? But it's like the little things. We both started off with making little tiny tweaks, okay? Like this week, am I in my menstrual week? Okay, let me add a little bit more beets to my meals. I'm not changing my entire like diet, but I'm adding in a little bit here. Okay, moving into follicular phase. Okay, I should be doing more cardio. I don't like cardio. Let me see if I like it a little more during this phase. Turns out I do, So like just little things here and there. When you start mastering like bits and pieces of it, then you can add on more. Then you can be like, okay, like let me try to change my entire breakfast now. Or you know what I'm saying? Just little.
For everything in life, I tell my clients the same thing because sometimes it's just this like influx of information. And I'm like, there's no need to get overwhelmed. We don't need to flip our life upside down. And I definitely felt that way by learning more about Eastern medicine and basically how everything's like, meant to hurt us and the whole thing. So we have to take it one step at a time. And I liked that example of just like adding something in, like adding beets into your meals. It's not like, okay, I need to like change around my entire work schedule and like reschedule all these things. It's simply just adding these little bits and pieces in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like, seriously, like Eva said, after a few cycles of like being intentional about like where you're placing your social events, where you're placing your commitments, like where you're really wanting to get in and do deep work, right? Like during the luteal phase, when you like are intentional about that for a couple months, truly things do start lining up and you're like, oh, I didn't even realize that all of my guests came to visit while I was in my ovulatory phase when it was a good time for me to be a host. And it's like, oh, and now things have quieted down. I'm in my luteal phase. Like people don't need me as much right now. It's kind of interesting. It's really freaking cool. It's kind of like witchcraft.
It is. Right. I mean, I love the term cycle syncing because it really, like, I don't think we realized it when we started, but it really is syncing your entire life. And women are just naturally are so magical and so powerful. And everything that we're doing is working with the world, like what the world has already given us, right? Coming from the earth and tuning ourselves to nature and to what nature feeds us, to being grateful for them, being grateful for ourselves, and really just honoring a woman's body, right? Because we give life, and we're the only, just like Mother Nature, it can grow a tree, and then it can also feed the earth as well with the fruit. And women are the same thing. And I think once we start to realize how sacred we really are, and we honor that, then the entire world will elevate. Men will start to reflect what we are, how we're honoring ourselves. Men will reflect and honor us in the same way, and they'll also start honoring childbearing in the same way.
Yes.
It's the most powerful thing. It's like no one would be alive if it wasn't for a woman birthing all of you.
We're literal portals, and somewhere along the lines, like it just became this thing that like, oh, like a girl is only like valuable if she's like, young and sexy, but as soon as she becomes a mom, cast her to the side. You know what I mean? Like it's such a fucked notion where it's like, no, like this woman like literally brought a human life into the world and now she's like worth less than like a supermodel. Like that's stupid,
Yeah.
So I think it's important for both genders now to start stepping into where we honor each other.
Yes,
we understand that it's a balance.
Yeah, and also honoring men for what they're good for, right?
I love to say like behind every great man is an amazing woman, and behind every great woman is amazing men, right? Or supportive fathers, supportive brothers, great best friends, business partners, and lovers and husbands. It kind of takes both. And men get to be great in what they're great in, and women get to be great in what they're great in. And if we love what we're the opposite about each other, instead of trying to drag it down, like, oh, women aren't this, or women can't think, or women shouldn't do math. Okay, well, men, you guys don't give great hugs, Like I wouldn't want to come and talk on the outlet. Yeah, like, and we love these things. And you start to look around the
Yes.
world and you realize the countries that are the most abundant are the ones that support women and they're not oppressing them. And the countries that are not very abundant, women are being oppressed. And because what women bring to the table is beauty, and it's very much it's beauty, nurturing, and very loving. And I think once we start to marry these elements together, the world will shift.
Yeah, I just want to say that, like, going back to like emotions, I just think like any woman that's oppressed, repressed, any kind of pressed,
Any type of
pressed is gonna have a womb issue. And like, I don't know where I read this, but it said something like you can tell the health of a nation by the health of its women.
That's so good.
So if your women aren't healthy, like, how are the kids and the people that they're going to be bringing through themselves going to be healthy? You know, like, kids take everything from their mom, their gut health, their calcium, their bones, their hair.
Where the state of your DNA, where it's at that time, and whether if it's environmentally active or where your DNA was at because emotions, right? That goes into the baby, and then that gene now will be activated and live on until that baby cures whatever sort of generational curse or trauma was lying within in the bloodline before. And this is all, like, I know it sounds woo-woo, but this is all DNA and science backed. It's wild.
Yeah.
It's not woo-woo. It's science. Like,
science is woo-woo to some people, I guess.
World made it so easy. It's like the sun. I always love saying this analogy so much because the sun runs on a 24-hour cycle like the male's hormone cycle, and a woman's runs on a 28-day like the moon. So it's like everything is set up to show us this polarity exists. And now,
wow.
Yeah.
I love that. I just learned about myself that I'm a Gemini moon and I'm like literally ruled by the moon. And I feel so, I mean, I love the sun. Like, I'm a sun girly, but there's just something about the moon. Like, just, I feel like my inner soul just like comes to life. And just hearing you say that, like, wow, I really am so interested in really, really tracking my cycle now and like seeing how it's going to expand myself and my life in every single way. But also, I think for all of the perfectionists out there like me who love the structure and the order, just to like give yourself grace because every week needs something different from you. Like, just a different side of you needs to come out, and to not push yourself. I mean, there is for sure a time to push yourself and to hustle and to grind, but it's definitely not all the time. That's for damn sure.
Men can do that all the time. We can't. Like you
Their
said,
hormones are stable.
Some days we can't.
Men are literally built for stress. Their bodies can't handle it. Their hormones, because they're the same every day, they can do the same thing. They can take on strenuous activity. But for a woman,
they can even eat the same thing all month.
Yeah, it would affect our egg too, right? Which would not it wouldn't bear the best offspring. Which I love this quote so much from that book.
Yeah.
That is very powerful.
We really hope the girlies have a lot to take away from this. And
for sure. I would love to hear, are there any, like, besides the cycle tracking apps, any products, any brands, any specific, I mean, we've already kind of talked about foods, but like things that you have incorporated in your life that has dramatically and drastically changed your period?
We'll talk about some of those things. Our recommendations can also be found on our Instagram. We're always making graphics with like, and we tag all the brands and everything so people know exactly where to find them. For me, bone broth has helped a lot. Having bone broth in the morning when I wake up before I eat anything.
Quick little side note about the bone broth. One of the episodes is coming to mind where you talked about someone mixed something with bone broth. And it's a little nasty, but I was like,
yeah. So my esthetician, so she gets the bone broth that's like not flavored, right? So it doesn't really have a taste to it. So then she'll warm it up and she'll put cocoa into it, and that'll be her hot chocolate.
Interesting. I've never seen an unflavored bone broth. It's either just chicken or beef.
Well, yeah, I think she does do the beef one, but it's just plain beef. So doesn't have like be spicy, or because I get like a lemongrass Thai because it has a little spice to it. But yeah, that's just what I mean, like a plain flavor.
Got it.
nice add, and I'm sure we talked about on the podcast too. If that cocoa powder is over 72% dark chocolate, you will get added benefits by increasing your stem cells by a significant amount. They did this study at the San Francisco College.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. Cocoa different than cacao, right? Because I'm a big cacao advocate.
Well, it should be cacao. Cacao
Cacao.
powder, 72%
Yeah.
and
Cocoa,
higher.
I think, is more of like that sweet, like Hershey's hot chocolate mix that they use.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Bone broth. Love bone broth. Any other?
Apple cider vinegar in the water before you eat.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have a problem doing something like that because it's maybe hard to remember, if you just drink a really large glass in the morning of water, and I put lemon, apple cider vinegar, and salt, so I get my electrolytes, my minerals, and everything, and I'll do a pretty big liter of that in the morning. And I intermittent fast. I've been practicing with that for about 2 months now, so it's also a way that I get all my minerals before my next meal.
Another product. So I'm like looking at our recommendations that we've already posted, but one major change that we have made is switching. I know people will think that this literally doesn't matter, but it so does. Switching your period products, whether you use tampons, pads, there's really like no wrong one. It's just whatever works for you. But just make sure you're getting organic, because they do spray the cotton with chemicals and stuff, and then using that inside your body for like years and years and years does lead to disease. And also the plastic applicators too. Like you really don't know like what's in that plastic. We were talking about this earlier, like our vagina is the most like absorbent part of our body. So I've found these Flow organic tampons, and the applicators are made with sugar cane. So it's like really, really cool.
Interesting. Yeah, that's another thing that I noticed within my body, a drastic change. I don't know why. I'm like, oh my God, Rebecca, like I haven't taken over-the-counter medicine in 2.5 years. I'm like the Eastern medicine girly. And for some reason, up until recently, I was using just regular schmegular, sport tampons.
And you don't really think about it.
Oh my God, the symptoms that subsided in my body, like I've never gotten huge cramping in my stomach, but I would get horrible back pain and like tender breasts and like all the things. I mean, like 50%, totally wild.
Yeah. I would say that's honestly the biggest recommendation that we can make right now. All the other stuff that we talk about as far as the podcast is like personal favorites, like the Amazon like wrist scrunchies, for washing your face, or like makeup that we're using. Eva's always on a hunt for like finding the cleanest, best makeup. Always. So she's just always bringing those
cleanest, best anything. I just don't let anything non-organic like touch my life. My mattress, the organic. Alina just got on the organic mattress.
It's like our
train that I'm on.
Our bodies absorb so much over the course of our life.
Your skin especially.
Yeah, totally. And the skin is the biggest organ in the body. So it just makes
so much
sense. But again, not to overwhelm anyone, because trust me, I've been there where it's like, oh my God, I literally have to throw out every single product in my house. We don't do that, one step at a time. I am always the biggest advocate to say like what's going in your body, so like a tampon or food. I think if you start with food and like really, really clean up your diet and like listen to these tips and tricks that were shared in the episode, you follow the Instagram, like that is going to help change your life in so many ways.
Yeah, and get your hands on Woman Code. That's what the book is called. It's Woman Code.
Okay.
By Alisa Vitti. So essentially she's this, I think she's from New York, but she's a woman who essentially healed herself from her own PCOS after the doctors told her, hey, you're basically like fucked. You're going to be fat and infertile your whole life. So she's like, this can't be my life. So she really just dove into hormonal research. And so she started this center. It's called the Flow Center, something in New York, where she just helps women change their cycles. And that book just basically kickstarted all of this for us. So if anyone wants to get into that research for themselves, that's a great starting point.
Amazing. I will definitely include that link in the show notes. Also, obviously, the Stellar Cycles podcast and your Instagram. But I want to talk a little bit about your webinar, because this is a new edition, right? So what is that? Is it like a website? Are you doing like weekly, monthly live streams?
Honestly, this was like our very first thing that we did. So we're just going to see how it goes.
It was kind of cool. It started as a request from a friend and a listener. He's actually a male, but a very supportive male. He's one of my close friends. We've known each other for 8 years. We've done a lot of business with each other. And he has employees. I think on the webinar, we had 15 or 16, maybe 16 16 people, and it was guys and girls.
Kind of half and half, actually.
Yeah, it was really cool too. At the end, even guys had questions for their girlfriends, and like they were telling us about maybe their partner was trying to get pregnant, or maybe one was having severe issues and they're trying to figure it out together as a couple, which I thought was so sweet. And they were getting advice for them to take back home.
So what Andy, Eva's friend, asked us to put into this webinar is like kind of like a presentation to kind of, give a little snapshot of this feminine cycle and like how things are much different for us, the different phases that we talked about, like the foods like kind of a little mini course technically on the female cycle. So we made like a presentation, and then we just did like a Zoom meeting like this. We recorded that, and then we posted it on our website for anyone who wants access to that.
Yeah. The information's really great. It's it's like very concise, and it gives you a clear plan on the system that we've personally used. So not only is the front half, it's giving you the education on how the cycle looks and why it matters. What are the symptoms and the side effects, the diseases, the illnesses that a lot of women that are found commonly in women, how to notice if they're coming up, how to prevent them from happening, and using the applicable, I can never say this word, techniques to shift it in a natural way. Also, what else did we give them? And the system to track the cycle and how to implement into their life very easily.
Yeah, so we gave them the grocery guide. We gave them an example of how to set your calendar for like your month, depending on where your phases are at. Just like little actionable ways that they could then take that information and start applying it to their lives.
Yeah. And then in the calendar work, we're basically going over kind of what we shared with you today, just a little bit more in depth about these are the elements, like what type of things should you do in each phase and how will that help you? And in this particular webinar, we're really bringing people together to help them function, not only like women be optimal in their life, but how to function in your career, like how to actually perform in all phases, and how to work with your cycle to get the most out of each phase, and how to work with each other within a team to know how to pick up slack. So if someone is in this phase, then someone else in this phase will come and step in, maybe to do the crucial meeting when someone in their luteal phase shouldn't be doing the front.
Shouldn't be talking at all.
So it's about an hour and a half worth of content there, and then you can find it on our Instagram, and then you'll go to the landing page and get that. We're selling that webinar, and if people wanted to do a private webinar, I'm sure we would do it again.
Yeah, we're just seeing like where things go from there.
Yeah, hearing you talk about this, I'm like, oh my God, we need to like team up, because my head is just spinning, because it just makes, makes
literally come to Austin to see you, Rebecca.
Oh my God,
100%.
yes.
I need a reason.
Maybe another reason to come to San Diego, though. It's pretty cool over here too.
Yeah.
Yes. But it just like my life has changed. Literally, it's 360 from like all the things that I've implemented in my life. I'm so excited to incorporate everything that we talked about today. Like I'm just imagining, some people, there's two sides of people. There are the people who maybe are a little more, I hate to say like woo-woo inclined, but are like, yeah, I'm open to this. Like I'm open to seeing how this can change my life. And then some people who are just super closed-minded and they're like, this is BS. But like, I urge you to just give it a shot, because you never know how your life can truly expand in so many different ways by just incorporating these tips and tricks that we went over.
I say if it doesn't hurt, it might help. So it's worth a try.
Yeah. I just think like with nowadays and how everything is saturated on social media, with everyone is like marketing some sort of product or trying to sell it. And it's like, this changed my life. No, this actually did change our lives and yours too, based on what we can hear. And it's truly like the biggest life hack for a woman ever.
100%.
On all levels, physical, spiritual, our bodies look better. Like everything just looks better. Our spirit, our mind is more clear.
More loving. We just want everyone else to feel that way too.
Yeah,
totally. Well, I'm just literally first thing after this call, I'm going into my calendar My Virgo sun just loves this so much. And I'm like, what can I change around and maneuver and put it into my ovulatory phase so I can look the most beautiful and all the things. I love it so much.
Also, is your birthday coming up?
Yes, it's on the 15th.
Okay.
I wonder what phase I'm going to be in.
Right around the new moon. Isn't it on the 14th?
Yeah, it's something like that. You're
Yes.
going to get a new moon, a Virgo new moon for
That's
your
so
birthday.
cool.
I know, it's a Virgo new moon. Mercury goes direct that day. And honestly, like, I think today or tomorrow is the last day of my period. So
Okay.
I might be in my ovulatory.
You're going to be in your
Wait, all
Right.
you.
Wow. See, that's why I love
this so
stuff.
much.
I like doing the math and being like, where are we going to be? How are we going to be feeling? What do we need?
Amazing. Okay, well, I want to shout you guys out. Where can they follow you? What's your website? Obviously, I will include this all in the show notes, but I like to hear it as well.
Stellar Cycles Pod on Instagram. You can find us on Spotify and podcasts, also Stellar Cycles. And on our Instagram is where you'd find our websites, any free downloads that we have available for you.
Our Instagram is at Stellar Cycles Pod. The type of stuff that we post on there is infographics. We post reels of us making food or of us like showing the lifestyle changes that we've been implementing. The reels have been doing really, really good. So yeah, for anyone who just like wants some fun, vibrant like graphics to look at that aren't boring and clinical and medical, follow us.
Yes, I'm always so impressed by your guys' content. I'm like, can you guys teach me how to do this?
Alina really kills it with graphics and anything visuals, which is the part that I've always just like drew me to Alina. She knows what looks good. She knows how to make things look good. Oh my goodness.
The aesthetics.
So in her, you know?
At the end of the day, like, you know, having like been a follower of this account for a long time, ever since I met Alina and like talking with the two of you, you can tell that this is like very heart-centered work. You're very passionate about this. You wholeheartedly believe in it. Like, this is not just, okay, we just like looked up some research and blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, this is a game changer. And you're already changing so many people's lives, but I just want to empower you guys to keep on going because truly this work is incredible.
Rebecca, thank you so much for even inviting us onto the Joyride. Congratulations on your podcast. It's been awesome. It's just really cool to listen.
You just have such a glowy and vibrant and like warm personality. And thank you for sharing that with us.
Wow, you guys. I love when I get affirmed. It's like the best thing ever.
You're just so easy to affirm. I'm like, it's just natural for me.
Wow. Well, this has been such an amazing episode. As I just said, every link, their podcast, website, webinar, which you guys should all go purchase after you listen to this episode, will be included in the show notes. Thank you so much, Alina and Eva, for being on the Joyride with me.
Thank you, Rebecca.
We love the Joyride. We'll ride it again.
Amazing.
We'll tell us.
I love it. Thank you guys so much. And thank you for listening. And I will see you in the next one. Bye.